Hello ladies and gentlemen, PlayAsia supplied me with this copy of this game, so if you want to support me and the channel, use the link in the description to go and buy something, and there's also a coupon code you can use to save a couple of bucks off your order. You'll be helping me out and hopefully you'll be buying something good. Thanks for your support, enjoy the show. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maximar, and I want to talk to you a little bit about, I should mute my speakers, I want to talk to you a little bit about Nioh 2. This is the latest in Team Ninja's attempts to ape the Dark Souls formula, but instead they're doing it with Japanese people in the 1600s and all that. A lot of people say they basically want Japanese Dark Souls, like, well, I guess it's, Dark Souls is like Western, Bloodborne is like London, Sekiro is Japanese, but like the Dark Souls formula in Japan, and this is probably closer than Sekiro is, at least I would think, but because Sekiro is kind of its own thing. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Nioh 2. And that is what I've got right in front of me. I am going to try and cut the amount of time this footage has in it down, because the overall length of it is like an hour 18, and I spent a fair decent amount of time trying to fight one fucking bird and trying to figure out where the bloody hell I was going. And the worst part is, this is actually the same stage, at least the video that I was about to record. I didn't know this at the time, so please don't blame me for this. But the video that you're about to see is of the same stage that was in the online beta that they put out a few months ago. I did not know this until I started recording that I was going to end up on that stage. So, not great. Please forgive me. Yes. So if I'd actually gone to the effort of actually finishing the Nioh 2 beta when I had it, I would actually know where the hell I was going. Except I don't, so I'm going to have to try and edit that down. Anyway, Nioh 2. It's a Dark Souls-like. Light attacks. Heavy attacks, blocking, stamina, all of that stuff. But instead, it's also got a little bit of, Japan weirdness on top of it from Team Ninja. So, of course, you're fighting things like demons. You've got a few different kinds of weapons that all level individually of each other. Their individual skills. You've got tons of emphasis on looting randomly dropped items and all of that junk. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you've played Nioh 1 at any point in the past, Nioh 2 is going to look very familiar to you. It is technically a prequel, but I never actually played the original Nioh 2 completion. I did play it a fair bit, but I never played it to completion, and frankly I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the story in that game anyway, so it's not like I care. That, and this is, again, a prequel, which is apparently somewhat disconnected, although it takes place in the same time period. Somehow. I don't know. So, anyway. It almost looks exactly the same. It almost sounds exactly the same. It almost plays exactly the same. So it definitely does play as the old Dark Souls clone that we know and a lot of people love. And to be fair, I really liked the original Nioh as well. I never finished it because Dark Souls games are Dark Souls and Dark Souls adjacent games are about as much of a time investment as something like a Persona RPG. They just take a fucking while. So I never got around to finishing that. But I still liked it, and hopefully Nioh 2 would be the same thing, but a little bit more. And to be fair, for 95% of it, it is exactly the same. So, the combat is still the same. You got a bunch of different weapons you can pick from. You get to start with whichever ones you like, but you can basically swap at any time. Basically just gives you a initial stat boost more than anything else. And you can go out, you fight with those weapons, you get anima, which is basically your souls, you die, you lose them all, but you can use them to do things like level up. You also get money, which I really don't know what the hell you're supposed to do with it this early in the game. I had the same problem in the original Nioh, where the blacksmith doesn't really do anything useful. She sells some items that might be useful from time to time, but you got so much money that you can practically buy her entire stock of miscellaneous items and not know what to do with them, so whatever. You've got all the usual stuff. You've got guardian spirits, which you can turn into living weapons, which you'll see at least once in this video. You've got, of course, leveling up with the individual stats affecting certain weapons and stuff like that. It's legitimately exactly the same game as Nioh for the most part. You even get the same blacksmith, I'm pretty sure, which is something else. I don't, I'll be honest if I say I don't really care for most of the changes they've made to Nioh 2, though, and I'm just going to skip ahead to the gameplay in my own footage, because, man, it takes me a while to actually get there. This was actually meant to be a in-the-moment commentary video, but I screwed the pooch so badly on trying to find the thing that I feel like I've got 30 minutes of footage I need to cut out. But I'm just going to leave the menus going, because I know people like to see that from these videos. But yes, it is basically the same. It's the same light attack, heavy attack system. It's the same blocking. It's the same dodging. It all works about the same way. I know some things have been balanced. The Kusari Gama is actually a lot weaker than it used to be, so I've ended up using the Spear for most of my run, which is a little bit disappointing, because I always like the old-fashioned Chain and Sickle when they show up. It was my favorite weapon in Tukiden, but I guess they didn't really want to give it any love in this game, so I've just been using the Spear, which has been actually fantastic as a sort of a all-purpose weapon. All the original mechanics are still here. You got your ranged weapons, which are good for headshots, for dealing some extra damage. You've got your stances, high, medium, and low, which have different movesets attached to them, different speeds, different damages, all of the usual bullcrap. You've got usable items, including elixirs, and you've got just practically everything else. Like, if you're looking at the actual gameplay footage of Nioh 2, if you were to take away the two soul core things and the counter icon in the top left, you could legitimately make people think, who haven't played the original Nioh extensively, that these are like later stages in Nioh 1, and they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They really wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to, at the very least. It also carries over to the game's overall performance. I am playing this on a PS4 Pro, so I get better frame rates than most people, but I still don't get fantastic frame rates, even when I've got it set to the stabilized frame rate mode. It's not great. I really wish it was on PC so that I could actually take advantage of my 120Hz monitor, but, well, that's just kind of what happens with these games, isn't it? They get exclusivity, and then they're stuck on these platforms for years, and if I want to play them, well, I'll have to get, like, 2 copies of them, unless I want to wait, like, 3 years for this one to pop back up on PC again. But yeah, performance on PS4, not great. It also makes my PS4 sound like a jet engine, so that's never particularly good. And it doesn't even look that much better. I mean, there's a couple of, like, little interesting changes here and there, but outside of that, yeah, it looks about the same. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an environment from Nioh and Nioh 2 if you put them side by side, so, you know. I feel like I keep coming back to that point a lot, but I really want to emphasize, this is a very similar game. It is legitimately, like, one of the most familiar games I've played in a while, because it feels like I've already played the damn thing. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's new. I'll talk about some of the more minor things. So, the one thing that I've actually really liked about Nioh 2, the one change that I appreciate they made, is that when you offer stuff like equipment and items to the Kodama at shrines in Nioh 1, it got your anima and it got your items sometimes, but they've added a third thing that you can get now, and that third thing is the Kodama Bazaar, where you can buy items up to a certain point. So, basically the idea is, they have a certain stock of items, and they check your items, and you can only buy up to what the store has or what you already have. So, just as an example, you can always refill your elixirs to 8, but no more. You can always get some arrows and some ammunition, but not a full amount. Basically, it means that you can just resupply yourself with the more donations you make to the Kodamas, which I really appreciate, because trying to farm 8 elixirs before every boss fight was getting really annoying in Nioh 1. It's a minor change, but I appreciate it. The changes to combat, not so much. Like, I don't have a massive problem with the soul cores. They're basically things that any yokai can drop now, and they are basically just special attacks you can pull out at any time by holding the R2 button and pressing square or triangle. And they take anima, which is the third bar that's been newly added up on the top and to the left. And this new bar fills up with attacks and with clearing out, like, the areas that the yokai put down. So when they put down those little things that make you slowly gain stamina, if you manage to purify it by doing a key pulse, you'll get some anima out of it. These attacks are usually pretty powerful, and depending on, like, how you like to play, how you like to fight certain demons and all that, you can just, like, go ahead and use certain attacks to your advantage. Those are fine. The one that I really don't like, though, is the burst counter. Now, the burst counter, as I understand it, it's actually different alongside certain types of spirits that you carry along with you. Like, I went for the brute spirit, because that's just how I roll. And the brute, it's different. So, in the brute sense, the brute counter is an animation that comes out relatively slowly. It takes like half a second. I demonstrated a couple of times in this footage. And the idea is, all the enemies now have a burst attack where they glow red and try and attack you. However, when they, if you manage to pull off the burst counter at exactly the right time, you'll do some damage to them. Usually pretty heavy key damage, or stamina damage, which will knock them down and hopefully give you the opportunity to get a few extra hits in. However, for the life of me, I have not been able to figure out the timing for basically any monster. There are so many different attacks. They can pull them out at different times, and the timings can be different between individual uses of the attack sometimes. So it's incredibly frustrating trying to know, because it can be really difficult to tell what exactly it is they want you to do. And it honestly drives me mad. I've tried a few times to learn like certain monsters' burst counter timings, but for the life of me, I just could not figure it out. It was honestly one of the most frustrating things I've had to deal with in a while. At least with games like Sekiro, it was incredibly obvious when you had to do it, just before they hit you. In this game, just before they hit you, feels like it could be any one of like 3 or 4 times, and it's just inherently harder to hit. I can't explain it too in depth, but I'm just saying that it's really frustrating to work with, and I've basically just gotten used to the idea of dodging out of the way of those attacks, because they actually have a pretty heavy cooldown on their end once they use a burst attack, which usually gives you a pretty good opportunity to get a couple of hits in. So, not the worst thing in the world, but I genuinely don't like it. I think they could have done it better. Like, maybe make the burst counter come out immediately, but instead make the attacks a little bit harder to dodge. But then again, if you do that, it starts feeling more like Sekiro. And this isn't Sekiro, this is Nioh. And, like, if I'm being perfectly honest, Sekiro doesn't... Like, Sekiro is the game I least want to go replay of the Souls games, because, like, they take a ridiculous amount of effort to learn how to play. So, you know, not exactly something I want for every clone of this kind. Let's hope that Elder Ring, or whatever that George R.R. Martin cross... what's-his-face who made Dark Souls and Bloodborne guy, doesn't turn out to have a system like that. Here's the other thing I don't like about this game. The AI partners. They have added the ability to not only take on AI ghosts of dead players for extra resources, like the things you need to go and get a co-op partner or go into co-op, but they've also had these little benevolent graves, which you can pick up as an AI partner. However, the AI partners are thoroughly dumb. They are ridiculously stupid, and I hate them for that reason. They stand there and take hits from bosses like they don't know what to do with themselves. They stand there and take hits from regular enemies and just don't attack them. They don't get out of the way of obviously telegraphed area of effect attacks. Basically, all they're good for is meat shields. Now, I understand that there's a delicate balance that you need to make with making it so that the AI isn't so good that it can carry you throughout the entire game. But I find it to be utterly ridiculous that they went so far to make the AI so stupid that it's basically pointless. Every boss fight I ever took an AI companion into, they were dead within 30 seconds. They just stood in the way of enemy attacks and just took them and died. And this is like a repeat for every single thing. Every single boss, every single enemy type I've tried. The only thing I've found that they're really good for is the enemy AI graves, strangely enough. You pull one of them up, then you pull an AI enemy up, and you just put them against each other, and they're about as likely to die as each other. So you just find yourself using them to help you get a little bit of advantage to get more co-op summoning things. But the funny thing is, I tried like 3 or 4 times to get people summoned in for this in this game. I even tried in this video, and I got a full like half hour of no one bothering to drop in. I don't know why. I didn't set anything to be like, hey, this game is completely private and you can't come in even though I'm asking for someone to come in. I didn't set an option like that, as far as I'm aware. But apparently, it just doesn't seem to want to work for me this time. I remember needing to use the co-op a couple of times when I was playing through like my original run of Nioh, because the difficulty was quite high. But this time, my goddamn phone. This time, it seems a bit easier, at least at the very beginning, because I've been doing surprisingly well there isn't a boss in this game that I haven't had to fight more than 3 or 4 times. Just let that one sink in for a moment, because in a Souls game, a Souls clone, or whatever you want to call them, that feels weird. Like, even in this footage, I made it so that, I didn't make it so that, but I actually played a boss fight towards the end, and I beat it the first time I saw it. I swear I didn't finish this level in the beta, so I never saw this boss, but I got it first try. I didn't even use, like, my living weapon transformation. I don't know how. I'm legitimately not sure how. It should not have been that easy. I was out of elixirs. I was a couple of hits away from death. Don't get me wrong, but my first try with no AI partner and no, like, weapon transformation is just silly. That legitimately feels silly. Like, I don't mean to toot my own horn. Am I that good? No, surely not. That's dumb. But yeah, I go through the rest of the menus and stuff in this footage at other points as well, but it is basically Nioh with a couple of extra tweaks in there. A lot of which that I don't like. Also, one other thing about the friendly AI thing, in order to actually have you be called in and get some rewards for it along the way, you actually do need to put down, like, summoning signs, quote unquote. They get used pretty much all the time. You don't have to, like, stay in the same level or what have you. But I keep forgetting to do it, so you kind of have to keep it as, like, a shortcut in your shortcuts, and I don't want to do that when I've got actually useful items that might actually turn out to be more useful. The rest of, like, the notable stuff in Nioh 2 is just, like, really minor stuff. Like, they've changed how some of the skill trees work. They've changed, but it's really nothing. It just looks slightly different. They've rebalanced some of the weapons a bit to the point where my favorite weapon from the previous game, the Kasari Gama, is even weaker than it used to be. So it's not that much fun to play anymore. It's just not that strong. Other than that, though, there's really not that much else to it. It really is just the same as Nioh, which is a quite competent, quite difficult Souls clone with fast pacing, some interesting mechanics like stances and like the demon transformations and all that. And I would say it's worth it, but I wouldn't call it a step up. I don't think the changes that they've made are worthy of, like, a 2. Like, this could easily be a spin-off. This could easily be just, like, an expansion pack for the first game, and nobody would bat an eye. And there is one other thing that I feel the need to talk about before I shut up and let you watch the rest of the footage, though. And that is the dub, which started immediately, and it's terrible. It's legitimately shit. It's not great. It makes it sound like a generic anime dub from the 2000s, except for these, like, weird out of nowhere characters. Like, there's this one guy, Master Dosai, who you try to rescue at the end of the first set of missions, who sounds exactly like the G-Man in his English dub. Like, I'm sitting there he's sitting there eating, like, some chicken, and I'm thinking, where have I heard this voice before? It legitimately sounds just like the G-Man. Thankfully, I found that for some reason the game set my audio language to Japanese again, so I don't know, like, I really don't know why they didn't have the Japanese voices by default, because this is a very Japanese game. This is about as Japanese as you can get without going full weeb. So I just end up thinking to myself, what's the point? Like, why have an English dub for a game that is legitimately helped out in the presentation department by Japanese voice acting? It sounds so weird to have, like, English voice actors do that traditional, like, Japanese sounds of eating meat. It's not something that English people really do. Or at the very least, it's not something that we do so loudly as that it sounds obnoxious when we do it. But they do it in this game's English dub. It doesn't feel right. Well, I'm going to go and try and edit this 1 hour, 15-minute footage down to something a little bit more sensible. I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think Nioh 2 is a bad game. but it's very, very similar to the first game, to the point where it doesn't even really feel like its own thing. It just feels like a expansion pack for the original game. Not that bad of an idea, honestly, and if it was nothing but improvements, I'd be applauding it. But most of the stuff they added isn't really an improvement. It's just like minor tweaks or stuff that was meant to do one thing but really does nothing but frustrate me. So yeah. It's still worth playing if you're a fan of the original Nioh, but if you didn't like the original Nioh, this is definitely not going to change your mind. It's legitimately the same game, but with, as I said, with minor tweaks. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
くやってたんだがな。後から来た侍どもに追い出されちまったんだ。おいおい、大丈夫か？焦んなよ。くそ、俺としたことが。織田の刃にかかるならまだしも無念。
よし、あれだ。俺に任せろ。怖い。かなり怖い。頼んだぞ。
Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you shitting me right now? All that trouble with the fucking bird, and I kill that boss on the first goddamn try. What the hell? I didn't even use my, I didn't even use this. I didn't even use this. What is this shit?
よしよし。
木を切るなら任せろだとよ。
はあ。
皆も戻ってきたみて
何これ。
言ったろ無名。これが藤吉郎流殺さずにして勝つ無害なあやかしもいるんだな、秀の字。よし、じゃあ砦を直しに戻ろう。一晩あれば十分だろう。